Hey everybody, in this video we're tackling exercise 143 on page 235 of Shelmerdine's text. So now let's look at this. Udes huto Andreos ein, hoste me tus gigantes phobestai. Alright, so udes. We remember this from this chapter. I didn't have a lesson for it, but this meant no one. And this was, quite literally, ude plus ace. This is going to be masculine, singular, nominative. It's going to be our subject, but even though it's masculine, you could use this to refer to no person in Greek. It's not that you would need to use the neuter form. So no one. So, remember that this is a kind of intensifying adverb. So brave was. Now remember that there's an etymological connection here between Andreas and aner, man. So no one was so manly, literally. But that's how we want to do it. So brave was is kind of our Yoda speak as we follow the word order. But no one was so brave that. And remember that this here, hosta, is giving us a result clause, a consecutive clause after this huto. So this is going to be our result clause that follows from that intensifying so. No one was so brave that he, we have to imagine here because we don't actually have our subject, so that he did not, because we want to keep the same relative time as the was, he did not fear. And then we can just have, again, no fancy fear clause here. Phobestai is just taking a direct objective, tus gigantas or gigantas, to not fear giants. I purposely chose an orange here to kind of capture the San Francisco Giants color scheme, black, gold, and white. Not sure if anyone follows the gigantes, but I do. So no one was so brave that he did not fear the giants, I should say, the giants. So what do we have here? This is just a present tense, middle, but it's a middle deponent, because phobeomai is a deponent verb, middle deponent infinitive. Because it's present tense, it's going to be the same relative time as this form of the past tense of ami. So no one was so brave that he did not at that same time was fear giants, the giants. Okay, great. Tosutos estin hokindunos hoste phobumai me uk apophugo. All right, so again we're going to get this hoste with a tosutos. We're again in the realm of the result clause. Also in some textbooks known as consecutive clauses. It follows as a result. So the danger, because that's going to be our subject here in our nominative, the danger is so great, of such a size, that I fear not. So here we're getting this may, that, uk, meaning no. So I fear that I, and then what do we need here? Well, what is this form? So the apo, that's a prefix obviously. This fug, hopefully we know that that's coming from felgo, but it can't obviously be from the first principal part. It's from the third principal part, which we know from the aorist indicative is ephugon. So this is a strong aorist, but in the subjunctive, which is what we'll have here, we've lost the augment and we've tagged on a kind of primary ending of o. So apo fugo, or just fugo on its own. And what we're saying here then is flee away. So the danger is so great that I fear that I will not flee. That's the notion here. You would probably want some, given the context, this to be that I feel that I will not be able to flee, but we don't have that here. I fear that I will not flee. That's how great the danger is. Tria eti, sorry, I've been practicing my modern Greek, so I'm pronouncing things wrong. Tria ete ephobumetha me hoi persai Te santo, ten patrida hemon. Screwing these things up left and right. That's all right. So 3 years, and remember that we have tria here. And what gender is that? Because once you get to numbers 4 and above, you don't have to keep declining them. But for numbers 1 through 3, these are declined. This is neuter plural. And of course it's plural because it's 3. And then this is a neuter plural ending of our word etos, right? Year. So what we have here is 3 years in the accusative. What do you think that's going to be? Well, that's probably going to be our measuring tape, right? If we're going to draw a kind of ruler, that's what the accusative of time is. We say, we can break this all up as an extent of time, extent or duration of time. So for 3 years, for without a U, for 3 years, we were fearing, we were afraid. Sorry, not I. We were afraid that the Persians something, te sainto, we'll get back to that, the fatherland of us, our fatherland. All right, good. Now what can we say about te sainto? Well, looking at this ending, we can tell it's third person plural with the nt omicron. And then seeing the omicron rather than untai, we know that this is a secondary sequence. So knowing that it's a secondary ending, we would think, well, we got 4 options for secondary. It can be imperfect, that's number 1. It could be aorist, that'd be 2. Number 3, and all these in the indicative, by the way, it could be pluperfect. Or if we were going to get out of the indicative, it would be number 4, the optative mood. All optatives are in the secondary sequence. Knowing, as we see here, that there's no past indicative augment, which all 1, 2, and 3 would have, we can rule those out and say, well, this has to be optative. And then what else can we check on the optative? Well, the optative normally has some form of an iota kind of wedged in there, and that's exactly what we'll have here. So we know we're looking for an optative of a verb that's beginning with the letters capital. Well, what could that be? Well, this is a new verb to chapter 33. If you're going to look either in the back of the book or at the end of the chapter, you would see kataomai. So one of these middle deponent verbs. Note that's also an alpha contract, and this verb means to acquire. So that's all well and good, and it's nice to know it's an alpha contract, but that's not going to get us this eta sigma. That eta sigma is, you can probably guess at this point, and you can double check it by looking up the principal parts. It's going to be aorist, a weak aorist. So we're going to have kates, and we could probably add the augment, add the weak aorist ending, and there we're ready to go. But here, without having to reconstruct the aorist indicative form, we can say that yes, this will be our aorist, weak aorist, optative, third person plural. So because it's aorist in this situation, this isn't about time, this is about simple aspect. Because what kind of time is it with this clause of fearing? Well, this fearing is going to be, because we're using a non-indicative mood, a future fear, or a fear of future event. Because note that it's future just relative to the past tense, imperfect verb we have here, efobu metha. So what we have here is then just simply would acquire. For 3 years, we were afraid that the Persians would acquire our fatherland. So that's the real trick in this, but it's also, again, we're working with these may clauses of fearing that use may as the that. And it's not negative at all here, it's just may meaning that. Good, last sentence of the exercise. Eton basilea apokte ois, elthus on tethnekos eis. Sorry, that should be a full stop, not a comma. So let's check this out. We've got a, so it's going to be an if statement. We've got something here, so this we can kind of guess what that might be, but we can see that there's an extra iota with this A. That's looking likely that this is optative. I mean, again, if you know these things well, you'll say, oh yes, clearly that's optative. But I know that at this point in your Greek studies, you're looking for rules that you can apply, for things that you can bring to bear. And it's nice to be able to kind of say, well, I'm going to rank these things on levels of suspicion rather than absolute knowledge. It's great if you can have absolute knowledge. If you've got all those charts memorized and you know every single thing, you're going to be a great student of Greek. You're going to have run into no problems. But for the rest of us, we need to do some educated guesswork about half the time. And then AAs, we know this to be optative because we've just seen it in these periphrastic forms, and lo and behold, this is one of the periphrastic forms, and lo and behold, too, we're getting on in the apodosis, in the main clause. So what does this all mean? A plus optative, on plus optative. We're dealing with a future, less vivid condition. So you have to do all of this before you can even start translating. And as future less vivid, this is going to be a would, should scenario. So if the king of, just king, if the king should apokteno, that's the verb that you're going to see in the dictionary. So what does that mean? Well, that means die. And I'm now thinking I just actually have a typo here. Yeah, I was thinking this looked funny. There should be a new right there, apoktenois. So what we've got here, we've got our form just like we need it, and then putting on that ois ending, it's going to be a present tense optative. Apoktenoi. So what did apokteno mean, or apokteno? That means to kill. We've had a couple verbs to kill, I think, in our time with Greek so far. So if the king should kill. Or no, because ton basileia, what case was that? It's obviously not nominative, that's accusative, because basileos is the thing, it is the nominative. So what we have here is if you should kill the king. Immediately, that's the elthus, immediately you would, because we have ace again, you would, and then on is just untranslatable, showing us that we're in a future less vivid situation. You would, and then tethnikos. So what's that coming from? Well, that's coming from apothnesko, and then in the perfect form, that apo drops out. They don't use it there. So you would, what? Have been killed. So let's pause for a moment here. If you should kill the king, future less vivid, you would, in the future, have been killed. Now, frankly, I'm having a hard time understanding this translation. Really just the sentence to begin with, because we are in a future less vivid. There's no doubt about that. And we are then talking about a future action. You will be in a state, or you should be in a state, you would be in a state of having been killed. But I feel like that doesn't quite square well with this protasis. If you should kill the king, immediately you would, I guess maybe, would have been put to death. I still don't think that quite captures the sequence of times that we need. So I think this sentence is a little bit suspect, frankly. But at least the future less vivid aspect of it is clear, and it does work. The problem is taking this perfect passive form that we have and treating it appropriately in this context. And if it had been something else other than killed, because I think we need to make sure that this killing happens after, I guess it can work. If you should kill the king immediately, you would have been killed after that fact. And we can kind of keep that. I think that's how we have to go after his death. So you would have been killed. But I think this is hard to do in English, frankly, because we want to somehow capture this perfect note, kind of essence of this verb, putting it in a future less vivid time with a verb like would as a proper helping verb. But this all seems a little bit too past tense in English. So I think we could say you would simply be killed immediately, with the understanding that really what's happened here is that you're killed with the result that you are dead. Uh, but that we're actually talking, so that's what we're talking about here. You would, if you should kill a king, you would be dead, in the sense that you would have been killed. That's poorly explained. I think this is a bad example sentence, frankly. But we got the key is that we're identifying this as a perfect passive in the optative with a helping verb. And that's part of this future less vivid where we have a plus optative and then on plus optative in the apodosis. All right, see you for some English to Greek. That'll be more fun.